I'm 22, and for most of my life I believed my mother was dead. At least that's what everyone told me. My dad, my grandparents, my teachers when I asked why I didn't have a mom like the other kids. The official story was, she died in a car accident when I was 10, and that was that. There was no funeral, no obituary, no pictures in the house. Just a single framed photo of her holding me as a baby, sitting in my dad's home office, turned face down behind a dusty box of receipts. I don't know why I flipped that photo over last week. I was just looking for some old school documents, but something made me stop and turn it around. And the second I saw her face again, her actual face, not the blurry version I had in my memory, I froze. Something was different, familiar, but wrong. Then, 2 nights ago, I got a message on Instagram, a private account, no name, no posts, just a single DM. You're old enough now, I need to talk to you. It's about your father, and me. That was it. No hi, no intro, just straight into it. I showed it to my best friend right away. She joked it was probably a scam, but something about it felt different, real, heavy. I didn't reply at first, but then I clicked on the profile and looked at the tiny, pixelated display picture. It was her, a current photo. Same eyes, same mouth, just aged, and behind her, the reflection of the window, I saw something even more chilling, a blurry silhouette of my dad. I stared at that profile picture for a long time, zooming in, squinting, trying to be sure. It was tiny, grainy, but unmistakable. That was my dad. Same height, same posture, even the same gray hoodie he's had for years. He was standing behind, not smiling, just there, which made 0 sense, because according to my entire childhood, my mom died when I was 10. She was gone, and my dad? He never mentioned her. Not after the first few months. I learned real quick not to ask. He'd shut down completely, go silent for the whole night, sometimes longer. But if that Instagram profile was real, then everything I've been told is a lie. I didn't sleep that night. I kept flipping between anger and confusion, and somewhere in between, a weird kind of grief. Grief all over again, like losing her twice, first to death, now to deception. The next morning, I woke up to another message. Please don't show this to him. Just meet me. 1 hour. I'll be at the little park behind your old elementary school. I won't say another word if you don't show. I swear. I felt sick. That park hasn't changed in over a decade. It still has the old wooden bench under the willow tree, the cracked water fountain, the rusting monkey bars where I broke my wrist in 3rd grade. I hadn't been back there in years. Not since my mom disappeared. I didn't tell anyone. Not my roommate. Not my best friend. And especially not my dad. I just said I had errands, threw on a hoodie, and took the train 2 towns over. When I got there, she was already waiting, sitting on that bench, sipping a coffee, hood up, hair longer than I remembered, streaked with gray. But it was her. Not a doubt in my mind. She stood up slowly when she saw me, like she wasn't sure if I'd run. I didn't, but I didn't sit down either. She looked scared, tired. Not just the I haven't slept kind of tired, but the kind that's etched into someone's bones. And her voice, when she finally spoke, barely made it above a whisper. She didn't say sorry. She didn't say I missed you. She said, he told you I was dead, didn't he? And just like that, the ground under me shifted. I couldn't even speak. I just nodded. And then she looked down, like she already knew. That's not even the worst of it, she said. I wanted to scream, to grab her and demand an explanation, but my mouth wouldn't work. My hands were shaking. I didn't even realize I'd sat down until I felt the cold wood of the bench under. She reached into her coat and pulled out something wrapped in an old grocery store receipt. It was a key. This opens the door to everything. But if you use it, you have to be ready. What your father did, it wasn't just to me. It's about you too. I stared at the key in my hand. She wouldn't say what it opened. She just walked away. I didn't go home right away. I walked the city for hours, that key burning a hole in my pocket. It wasn't fancy, just an old bronze house key, a little scratched, nothing special. But every time I touched it, I got this heavy feeling in my chest, like it was connected to something I wasn't supposed to find. I kept replaying her words in my head. What your father did. It wasn't just to me. It's about you too. What the hell did that even mean? I finally went home around 6, and when I walked in, my dad was already in the kitchen, chopping onions for dinner like it was just a normal Thursday, and for a few seconds, I almost pretended it was. I almost sat down like usual, made small talk, let him tell me about his day, the weather, the local hardware store drama he always weirdly followed. But then I looked at him, really looked at him, and something shifted. For the first time in my life, I wondered what else he'd lied about. How many nights did he tuck me into bed knowing he'd faked a whole death? How many times did he help with homework, or show up to parent-teacher conferences, or cry with me on the anniversary of her accident, knowing it was all a performance? It made my skin crawl. I kept the key hidden in my sleeve and excused myself early. Said I wasn't feeling great. He didn't press. He never really did. That night, I waited until he went to sleep. Then I started looking. I had no idea what the key was for. I knew it wasn't for anything in our house. I'd lived there my whole life. I knew every door, every drawer, and yet some part of me kept pulling toward the attic. We never went up there. My dad used to say it was just insulation and junk. The door was stiff, like it hadn't been opened in years. I pushed until it gave with a loud groan that made my heart jump into my throat. Dust everywhere. Old furniture, boxes, the usual. But then, tucked behind a wardrobe, there was a door. A door, I swear, was never there before. It was small, too small for an adult to use comfortably. The frame looked warped, like it had been installed hastily or badly patched up and reinstalled later. There was a newish lock on it, the kind you'd buy at a hardware store, and a little brass keyhole. I pulled out the key. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped it twice. It fit. I turned it slowly and heard the unmistakable sound of a bolt sliding free. I stood there for a moment, hand on the knob, listening. Nothing. No sound from the other side. No movement. Just silence. And then I opened it. Behind the door was a narrow staircase. Steep, wooden, descending into pitch black. This didn't make sense. That part of the house? It shouldn't exist. There was no room underneath the attic. Nothing in the floor plan. I checked last year when we had a pipe burst, and the contractor gave us a full layout, but here it was. A hidden stairway, leading down into the dark, and carved into the top stair, barely visible under the dust, was a name. My name. I stared at that stair for a long time, not moving, just staring at my name. It wasn't written with a marker or pen. It was carved, jagged, like someone had done it in a hurry. The kind of carving you do with a pocket knife when your hands are shaking. It looked old, like it had been there for years, maybe more. And yet, I had no memory of ever being here. I should have turned back. I should have closed that little door, locked it, pretended I never saw it. But you know how sometimes your body just moves? Like something deeper takes over? That's what happened. I couldn't stop myself. I stepped onto the stair with my name, felt it creak beneath my foot, and began to descend. Each step groaned like it hadn't been touched in decades. The air was thick, stale, like damp wood and old paper. I had to use my phone flashlight, and even then it barely cut through the darkness. The walls were narrow, almost pressing against my shoulders by the time I reached the bottom. And then I saw it. The room. It was small, smaller than my bedroom, and almost entirely empty. Just 4 cement walls, no windows, no furniture, just a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. It was off, but when I flipped the switch on the wall, it flickered to life. There was one thing in that room, a chair. Not just any chair, a child's chair, wooden, painted light blue, chipped around the legs, like it had been sat in too many times by a small, fidgety body. And on the wall in front of the chair, dozens of pieces of paper, taped up, lined in perfect rows, drawings, childlike ones, stick figures, houses, suns with smiling faces. Some were barely more than scribbles, but as I walked closer my stomach dropped. They were mine. I recognized the way I drew trees, the same weird 3-fingered hands, my handwriting in the corners, Mommy spelled wrong, me plus Dad, my house, drawings I'd made in kindergarten, 1st grade, and 2nd, but never brought home, because I'd been told I lost them, or they got thrown out. But here they were, all of them, preserved, hidden. Why would my drawings be taped up down here? I started pulling one off the wall to look at the date, when I noticed something even stranger. Some of the pictures weren't mine. Different style, different colors, same paper, same age, but not mine. And on one of those papers, drawn in bold red crayon, was a picture of 2 kids, stick figures holding hands. Above them, in crooked letters, it said, "Me plus Sarah," my name, but I hadn't drawn that. Someone else did. Someone else knew my name when I was a child. I stood there, that piece of paper in my hand, barely breathing. Me plus Sarah, that's what it said. Stick figures holding hands under a red sun, one with short hair, one with long. The short-haired one had a big grin. Mine didn't. The eyes were big, hollow circles. It made my skin crawl. But the worst part? It wasn't my handwriting. It wasn't even close. And I wasn't the one who drew that smile. I turned over the paper. There was something faint written on the back, barely visible under the crayon bleed through. I had to hold it right up to the light bulb to read it. Just one sentence. "He says you're not real." I dropped it. It fluttered to the floor like it weighed nothing, but it felt like it landed with a crash. The air suddenly felt colder in the room. I took a step back, my flashlight bouncing off the walls. There was no furniture, no shelves, just that tiny blue chair, the drawings, and now something else. In the far corner I saw a box. It was wedged into the wall like it had been hidden behind the other paper, a cheap plastic bin with a lid. the kind you'd store old clothes in. I hesitated, then crouched down and opened it. Inside were toys. Old ones. Faded, chewed on, broken in places. A stuffed rabbit with one eye missing, a wooden train, a doll missing its arm, and a name tag, the kind you'd find on a daycare cubby, laminated and peeling at the corners. Mason. Not my name. I'd never known a Mason. Not in school, not in family, not anywhere. But the moment I said it out loud, something lit up in the back of my flicker, a memory to crawl back out of the dark. I sat back on my heels and closed my eyes, and that's when a voice, not mine, a boy's voice, laughing, then crying, screaming, calling for me. Sarah, don't leave me down here. It was like someone had plugged a speaker in my brain. My chest tightened and shook. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. Something in me needed to. I grabbed the stuffed rabbit and turned it over in my hands. Stitched into the back, in faded thread, was a date. 2009. The year my mother died. That year's etched in my brain like a scar. It was the year everything changed. The year my mother died. The year I stopped sleeping through the night. The year I started wetting the bed again. I always thought it was grief. But what if it was memory? What if I knew something back then and just forgot? I sat there in that cold, hidden room, clutching that rabbit like it could answer me. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to go back upstairs and look my father in the eye. I just wanted to sit in the past and make sense of it all. Mason. That name started echoing louder in my head the longer I sat in that space. I whispered it out loud again, and suddenly, there it was. A memory. Small. Slippery. 2 bowls of cereal on the table. 1 red plastic spoon. 1 blue. I remember fighting over the red one. I remember someone laughing when I pouted and crossed my arms. Not my dad. A child. A boy. We sat on the floor in front of the TV watching cartoons. We built pillow forts. We fought. We made up. I didn't grow up alone. I had a brother. I shot up, heart pounding so hard I could barely think. My breath felt like it was trying to escape my body before I could catch it. I grabbed my phone, went to the family photos folder, what little we had, and scrolled through every image, every birthday, every holiday. Always just me. Me and Dad. Me and Grandma. Me and a sea of cousins and classmates and people whose names I barely remembered. But never a boy. Never Mason. I tore out of that room, nearly tripping up the attic steps, slamming the hidden door shut behind me like it could trap the truth inside. I didn't sleep that night. I just laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, heart racing. The silence in the house was suddenly too loud. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like a warning. The next morning, I left before my dad could wake up. I didn't even pretend to be casual. I was out the door by 7 a.m., and on the bus to my grandma's house across town by 7:30. She opened the door in her robe, shocked to see me. I didn't let her talk. I just looked her dead in the eye and asked, "Did I have a brother?" She froze. Completely. No blink, no twitch. Just frozen. And then she started to cry. That's when I knew. I'd never seen my grandmother cry like that before. Not at Grandpa's funeral. Not when her sister passed. Not even when we lost our house in the storm years ago. When I asked her if I had a brother, the dam just broke. She didn't try to lie. Didn't ask what I meant. She just whispered one word. "Oh, Sarah, you remember." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat was dry, and my hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the edge of her kitchen table just to stay upright. She poured tea. Her hands were trembling too. We sat in silence for what felt like forever before she finally started talking. She said Mason was my twin. Not older, not younger. My twin. I didn't speak. I just let her keep going. He was loud, wild, curious. Climbed before he could walk. He was always getting into things. Cupboards, drawers, my dad's tools. He was the kind of kid who'd fall down a flight of stairs, cry for fight again back. She smiled, a sad, distant kind of smile, the memory, and then she got quiet again. She told me there was an incident. We were 5. My dad had taken us both to the park, but we came home alone. Mason had wandered off. That's what my dad said. He blamed the crowd. Said he only took his eyes off for a second. There was a police search, helicopters, dogs, flyers on every lamppost for miles, and then, a week later, my dad claimed he'd found Mason's jacket in the river. That was it. No body, no confirmed death, just gone. I was told he drowned. The official story was an accident, but my grandmother didn't believe it. She never said it out loud, but I saw it in her eyes. She knew something wasn't right, and she tried to fight back, tried to push for more, but my dad shut her down. He cut her out, took me, and disappeared for nearly a year. No phone calls, no letters, nothing. When we finally reconnected, I didn't remember much, and neither did he, or so I thought. But then she told me something else. Something worse. About 2 months before Mason disappeared, my mom started acting different. She told my grandma she was scared of my dad, that she'd found something in the attic, that he was hiding things, watching people, recording conversations, writing names down in a notebook. My mom said he had secrets, things from before we were born. She told my grandma she was going to take us and leave him. And then, before she could, Mason vanished, and 2 months after that, so did she. But my dad told everyone she'd left us, that she couldn't handle the grief, couldn't stay in the same house anymore. No note, no contact, just gone. And for a while they believed him, until she called my grandma, from a burner phone, whispering, "He knows. He saw me looking. Tell Sarah I love her. Don't let her forget Mason." That was the last time anyone heard her voice. Until last week, I left my grandma's house completely numb. The train ride home didn't feel real. The streets looked unfamiliar, like I was walking through a dream I couldn't wake up from. I could hear Mason's name echoing in my head, over and over, overlapping with my mom's voice from that single phone call I never knew existed. Tell Sarah I love her. Don't let her forget Mason. But I did forget, and now, piece by piece, it was all coming back, like my brain was unpacking a box someone had shoved in the back of the attic and nailed shut. I waited until night, until the house was still, and I could hear my dad snoring behind his door like always. Then I went back to the attic, back to that door I swore I'd never open again. This time, I brought gloves, a flashlight, my phone camera. I was done playing scared. If there was still more down there, I was going to find it. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I looked around with new eyes. The air was even heavier now, like the room didn't want me there, but I didn't care. I scanned the drawings again, Mason's mine, and then I noticed something. There was space between the rows, perfect symmetry, but one wall had a gap. It was barely noticeable, just a few inches wider than the others, but the tape marks on the cement showed something had once been there, something that had been removed. I turned and started checking the floor, following the pattern of dust and tape residue, and that's when I saw it. Scuff marks on the concrete, shaped like a rectangle. I pulled my flashlight down, and there it was, a false panel. It blended in perfectly with the wall, but up close, you could see the faint outline. I pressed against it. Nothing happened. I pressed again, harder, and felt a shift. There was a tiny metal hook at the bottom, flush with the floor. I used a coin to pop it loose. The panel creaked open. Behind it, a tiny crawl space, barely big enough for a child to hide inside, and inside that space, a camcorder, dusty, but intact. Tapes beside it, labeled in black marker, some with dates, others with names. One said Mason, July 2009. Another, Sarah, Sleep, Aug 2009. My hands went ice cold. There were dozens of them. Tapes with my name, tapes with his name, even one labeled Practice. The camcorder still had a battery. I pressed play. The screen lit up. A date appeared, July 4, 2009. The image shook as the camera adjusted. It was grainy, unfocused, but the audio worked fine. I heard crying, a child's voice. Mason, I'll be good. I promise. Please let me out. Then silence. Then footsteps. And then my father's voice. Calm, cold, completely detached. You should have stayed quiet. And the screen went black. I didn't sleep then. After watching the Mason tape, I sat in that hidden room for hours, knees pulled up to my chest, trying not to vomit. My dad's voice haunted every corner of that concrete space. Not angry, not loud, just empty, void of feeling, like Mason wasn't even a person to him, just something to control. When I finally stood up, I didn't take all the tapes. I only took one, the one that scared me the most. Practice. No name, no date, just that single word, scratched into the plastic like it was carved in a rush. I almost didn't want to know, but I had to. If I was going to confront my father, I needed to understand what I was dealing with. So I went to the library the next morning and borrowed an old-school camcorder from the AV desk under a fake name. I told them it was for a film project. I couldn't risk playing that tape at home. I found an empty study room in the far corner of the building, locked the door, shut the blinds, and hit play. The tape began with static, then color bars, then suddenly, video. A woman sitting in a chair, my mother, hands in her lap, face swollen, lip cut. Her eyes were red from crying, but her mouth was shut tight, like she knew speaking wouldn't help, like she'd already tried. Behind the camera, I heard the same voice I'd heard on the Mason tape, my father. He spoke calmly, like he was reading a bedtime story. You know what happens next, but it's easier if you just say it. My mom didn't answer. There was a long silence. Then he said it again. Say it, or I start over. Again. Still nothing. And then, slowly, she spoke, barely above a whisper. Sarah belongs to me. I stopped breathing. You're her father. You make the rules. Mason didn't listen. I wanted to shut the tape off. I tried to, but my hand wouldn't move. Then the camera zoomed in, so shaky it made me sick. It focused on her face, her tears, and the trembling way she looked directly into the lens. I'm sorry, Mason, she whispered. I couldn't save you. The screen went black, then static, and finally, silence. That's when I knew. She didn't leave because she was weak. She didn't run away because she couldn't handle us. She stayed until it nearly killed her. She stayed trying to protect me, and my father. He made everyone believe she was the one who abandoned us. that she was the broken one. When the tape ended, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there for a while, still and cold, until a plan started forming in my head, because now I knew what I had to do. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. I stayed at a motel near the highway, one of those cheap places where no one asks questions if you pay in cash. I didn't sleep. I didn't even lie down. I sat in the dark with the practice tape in my hand, playing that final moment over and over in my head. I'm sorry, Mason. I couldn't save you. She tried. She tried, and he broke her for it, and he's been living in our house ever since, like nothing happened. That morning, I knew it had to end. I packed the tapes in a backpack, including the one with Mason's name, and I went home. My father was in the kitchen, eating toast like always, humming some dumb commercial jingle like a man with zero weight on his soul. I didn't say a word to him. I went straight to the living room and plugged the camcorder into the TV. When the image flickered on and his voice came out of the speakers, humming stopped. Toast dropped. He stood behind me, silent. I played the full Mason tape, start to finish. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry, and I watched him watch it. His expression didn't change, not once. When it ended, I turned around and said one sentence. What did you do to my brother? He looked at me for a long time. Then he finally spoke. He was dangerous. That's what he said. Like he was talking about a dog that bit someone. He sat down slowly, like he was the one who had something to grieve. He said Mason was wrong. That he had something in him that wasn't normal. That he hurt animals. Lied. Tried to hurt me once, when I was too little to remember. But I knew it was a lie. Because if Mason was a danger, you don't build a room in the attic and record his screams. You don't hide drawings and carve names into stairs. You don't make a child disappear and call it parenting. He didn't lose control. He planned it. And my mother? She found out. She tried to stop it. That's why she vanished too. He didn't kill her. I know that now. But he made sure she'd never come back. And me? I was the one he wanted to keep. The obedient one. The blank slate. The daughter who forgot. Until now. I told him I had the tapes. That I'd made copies. That I'd sent one to my grandmother. Another to my mom. And one more. To the police. He laughed. He actually laughed. Said no one would believe it. Said I was just like my mother. Emotional, dramatic, unstable. So I told him to check the front porch. A cruiser pulled up 10 minutes later. They took him without a struggle. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He just looked at me as they walked him to the car. Not with hatred, not even fear. With disappointment. Like I had betrayed him. I haven't been home since. They sealed the attic. I'm staying with my mom now. Yeah, my mom. The woman he spent a decade trying to erase. She's not perfect. She has scars I'll never fully understand. But she remembers Mason. She whispers his name in her sleep. We lit a candle for him last night. We put his name back into the world. Mason, my brother, my twin, the boy who was never dangerous, just unwanted by the wrong man. And now? Now he'll never be forgotten again.